Hi, this is lesson 2 or video 2 on transfers, transmissions, and Shaktipat. So in the last video I mentioned that some people unwittingly gave Shaktipat to other people, and that generally will naturally happen to a person who has Kundalini awakened and it's already cleaned out their channels and pathways to a certain extent. And they'll find that perhaps they'll naturally start to channel this universal source energy. And as I mentioned, universal source or energy will flow from relatively opened people to relatively unopened people to share it. So it will just happen unbeknownst to them. And basically what's interesting is that there are a lot of people who are Kundalini awakened to the extent that they could develop this natural ability if they wanted to. They could use their intent and be sending Shaktipats to people quite often. And basically all that you really need to do is set up the causes and conditions for that to happen. So really it's almost a kind of manifesting in a way. The universe is only too happy to oblige you because its prime directive, it wants people to evolve, so it will be happy to promote you to a sender of energy if that's your desire as well. So I think what you might want to do just to start off doing that is just sort of notice your body, notice how you're feeling, what you're doing at the times that you think you're sending a Shaktipat to somebody else, and then try to replicate that later. Generally speaking, what people do when they're sending Shaktipat is they somehow link themselves up to the universal source energy by going into a kind of feeling state of openness, oneness, love towards the universe at all, or feeling very sort of fragile or surrendering completely. That type of stuff. I mean, if you're involved in the spiritual path at all for a while, you kind of know what I'm getting at when I'm talking about this type of thing. It's a kind of pure feeling state that you just allow yourself to be in, and then you notice maybe a kind of blissful feeling running through your body, or at some place around your body, or your third eye or something like that. And then you can use your intent, your will, your intent, and if the person is nearby, then you can kind of intent to focus the energy on that person. It doesn't really matter where you direct it, in their spine or whatnot, but and generally speaking, it will know what to do. It's universal source energy. It has intelligence beyond our intelligence. We're just sort of tools. We're just sort of like play acting, but the real sort of high intelligence is sort of goes on beyond us. All right. So I've talked about 3 tiers of sort of existence, let's say, and that's the model I built in order to help understand what I'm getting at when I'm talking about these energy levels. So remember I mentioned material level, physical plane. I mentioned energetic with something like chi and auras, and then I mentioned something like spirit. But then I also kind of talked about sort of this universe and the traits of a universe. So I kind of I sort of like communicated that there was another level, a higher level, so a 4th level, being something like God or the universe or the Tao, something like that. And so, but really there are many levels. I just use that as a model, like a map, like a practical guide. And you'll note that every tradition in spirituality has some kind of map or guide talking about various energies or levels, whether it be spirits and souls and things like that, the Holy Trinity, or the Jing, Qi, and Shen of the Taoist tradition. And then there's these gigantic long names in Sanskrit for the traditions that come out of India. So but even though they're not all sort of like pointing to the same aspects, they are pointing to a sort of some aspects, and their adherents can use those as a practical guide, as a practical type of way of seeing this very complicated type of energy levels and spirits and things like that. Okay, so let's talk about now why people would give transmissions. And there are many reasons. One is sort of healing. So a person can give a healing type transmission of energy, chi energy, and that tends to work alongside with a person's natural defense system and immune system. So it will just help them naturally defend against diseases and things like that. Now, a master of a certain school might also give a certain energy transfer in order to open certain areas on a student's or a person's energy centers on their body. So generally speaking, the areas that they like to focus on are the lower dantian, which is like 2 finger widths below the navel, that chakra there, which is sort of like where chi, the chi chakra. And then there's sort of like this area near the pineal gland. Gets focused upon a lot. It has many names in different traditions. The Neiwan or the Chamber of Isis and things like the Crystal Palace. But whatever you call it, it's that energy center area around the pineal gland. So, and then there's also other type of reasons. For example, like a blueprint, type of energetic blueprint. Now this is kind of tough to explain. So we have an energy body, but it's full of potentials. So in somebody might have already awakened a certain pathways or nadis or some sort of power, and so they can kind of transfer the impetus in order to perhaps open another person's nadis pathways or something like that instantaneously, or just to give them the potential so that it can if they work on themselves, that will happen in a much quicker way. So we're talking about like the Vajrayana path in Tibetan Buddhism uses a lot of these type of energetic transmissions, and they call them empowerments, and they usually come with some form of big long ritual. So I'll just give you an example. Like you might have heard of Vajrayogini, who is a tantric deity. So somebody who is initiated into a Vajrayogini type practice, maybe one of those aspects of those practice is called tumo breathing. So the tumo is meant to open up a kind of siddhi or superpower where the body is able to create heat. You might have seen some videos on YouTube of some people who are able to create a kind of heat in their body, and then they can go out in minus whatever, something 20-degree weather and still stay really warm, or there's monks and things like that. So that's a result of tumo. And if you practice Vajrayogini practice, she's sort of like known as the deity who can bestow that power. So in order to kickstart that ability, you could go to your, you would receive that transmission and then follow the instructions of the pathway, and then it will help you evolve that way. Okay, so, but it's not necessary, it's just one method. You could actually develop that ability, and the ones we hear of in the West, they kind of develop it on their own without the the whole practice and the deity and things like that. So what I'm trying to get at here is you don't have to chase after these type of transfers or empowerments or something like that. What happens if you're ready for the transfer, if you're ready for, if you have the potential yourself to make a kind of spiritual leap forward, it will just happen naturally for you. Even something like my little video can even be enough to influence you to make a giant leap forward. So who can send transmissions? Well, generally speaking, beyond what I talked about with Shaktipat, because that's universal source energy, right? So that was what I'm talking about more is somebody who's working with more specific areas or something like that, not universal source energy, Shaktipat, which I've already discussed. So in order to work with higher level spirit, you generally have to have, been in the game long enough. You have, evolved your consciousness so that you can communicate with spirit level, and that sets off that, as I mentioned, that chain of causation to chi level, and then the chi can move and do various sorts of things like open people's centers or send energy and things like that. Okay, so generally speaking, it's just by dint of your own sort of like spiritual evolution practice, be it meditation or your whole life, basically is that kind of path. You as I'll mention maybe later, and then it could happen as a kind of gift, like just you hear of people who have gifts, special abilities, and you might think that it's really rare, but actually if you're in sort of these spiritual circles and forums, you kind of see that it happens much more often than you think, but except that people don't really know what it is sometimes. So I remember a girl came on to a forum, and she was really worried because she was kind of electrocuting her boyfriend whenever she got excited, and so sort of like what are those like an electric current would just go from her arm, and her boyfriend would get a massive amount of shock. And if you just look at Hollywood movies, what would they tell you? They only focus on like complete like utter rubbish, just like negativity and just sort of materialism and just garbage, for the polar opposite of what's true. So of course she was worried, but I tried to set her straight so that she got some sort of healing gift there and she could work with that. Okay, so there's other ways of getting these gifts. So maybe from the intercession of a higher level deity, or we say God, something like that, which I'll discuss more, break down more in the next video. It's a very interesting topic. And it could also happen because you've worked on a certain type of meditation or energy practice. A lot of these practices are kind of hush-hush, and it also requires a heck of a lot of work to do energy practices enough that you can manifest the result, when the result is that you're able to send energy transfers. Just give you an example. I have a friend who does a certain type of breathing practice, and then he became a kind of master or accomplished that type of breathing practice, and was able to send like very powerful energy transfers to people. So that's video 2.